We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. Another week, another epic guest. We connected with today's guest through social media, and later we discovered that he was also the MC for an event that's pretty close to our hearts.
Oh, yeah. Today's guest is no joke. His passion for podcasting is off the charts. Let me tell you, I've been looking at his Instagram, and I mean, it is very passionate about podcasting, which led him to help others launch their podcast in 90 days or less with his business, Podcast Launch Lab.
That's right. And he also practices what he preaches. He is the host of the successful podcast Beyond the Story, in which he interviews high-level personalities such as John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire, Jason Pfeiffer from Entrepreneur Magazine, and many, many more.
Oh, yeah. I think he's about to hit the 100 episode mark in there. So that's pretty epic. That's pretty epic. Please, let's get this party started. Please welcome epic podcaster Sebastian Rusk. Look at that.
What's up, gentlemen?
How you doing, man? Thank you so much for being here.
If I was any better, my name would be Louis.
You will be the third bro.
I would be. I absolutely would be. What's up, gentlemen? Great to be here with you guys.
Well, welcome to the show. By the way, so I just gotta say, like, your positioning, incredible. I know that you have a book. I know that you have like the gear. You help incredible people, and that's what got me hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, why? And it was a feeling because we owe so much to podcasting. You know, we can dive into this, but I love the fact that you master that, and now you help a ton of people with it. So for those who don't know,
before we get started, I just wanted to add something here that I should have added to the intro. Right? I should have said that you are a contender for sexiest podcasting voice, man. I mean, we've had a few really cool podcasting voices here in Content is Profit, and I think you're up there, my man. I just had to put that out there. That's it.
I appreciate that. I'm told I have an amazing face for radio and podcasting, so yeah, go right along with there. The funny story is that I grew up in a radio station, and that my dad was a DJ for 30 years, and I had zero intentions of following in his footsteps. I didn't think I was going to go in the military and become a podcaster. I didn't go into the military, but I definitely became a podcaster. So, like a buddy of mine said to me on a golf course a couple of weeks ago, man, our genes sure are powerful, because I had no intentions. And, sometimes we don't have intentions of following in our parents' footsteps, but we end up somewhere, or a relative or whatever it might be. So I'm grateful for it either way. It was clearly what I was what I was born to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates so much, because her mom, she's actually a math teacher. And I remember growing up, when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, I want to be a math teacher just like my mom, right? Oh, when I, started being a little bit more of a conscious being, I was like, I don't really want to be a math teacher. But now we are somewhat in the education environment, right? Because we're helping people with teaching them about content. So just like you mentioned, it's
just not trigonometry.
Exactly.
Yeah, he'll be starving. But
me too.
So, what pushed you to publish, right? Like, what pushed you to get out there? What happened in your life? You were like, hey, this is the road I want to take.
I don't think it was a road that I said, this is the road that I want to take. I think it was a road that found me, because out of deep desperation for wanting to figure it out. The story started over back in 2008 when the market crashed. I found myself moving back from Southern California to Miami with a duffel bag and my daughter. I raised my daughter on my own. And in addition, as if being an entrepreneur wasn't enough, let's raise a kid on our own. But thank God I was able to do that. And when I came back here in 2008, I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I didn't even have any motivation to figure it out. So from 2008, 2010, I was pretty much just, and people would ask, what do you do? And I just say nothing. Daytime television. And then in 2010, I had an awakening moment, and I said, you know what? I need to awaken the giant within. I'm going to go see Tony Robbins and walk on fire. Yes. So I called a friend of mine that was working for Tony at the time and filled me in on all the details. And then she called me back a few minutes later and she's like, hey, you need to meet a friend of mine that's actually on Tony's core team that travels with him. She's an incredible human being and you guys would totally hit it off. Well, I was just meeting casually, just for new connections. I had a little bit of desire for what I wanted to do next. I was active on social. I just hadn't figured out how to do anything with business pertaining to it. And so we met up later that week and she asked me a pivotal question that forever changed the course of my life and the path that I was on, or the lack thereof of the path. And she looked at me and she said, Sebastian, what's next? And I said, I don't know. And she looked at me and said, that's a problem. And that's the PG rated version of her feedback. And I said, she goes, you need to be doing something, because I said, well, why is it a problem? She goes, because you not doing anything means the world's missing out on you. And I thought, never thought about that. Quick lesson in showing up, right? Not because it's about us or what we can potentially do, but what it does for others. So I conceptualized my first company, which was Social Buzz TV, and I started evangelizing the fact that it was going to be the best social media company ever. And I do local networking events, and I would go to networking events. I do social media boot camps, and then eventually people would say, "Hey, maybe you can help me out with my social media." So I started the podcast or the social media agency in 2011. Wrote my first book in 2013. Social media sucks if you don't know what you're doing. And I told that whole story, but I also gave my feedback and questions that I was often asked I would speak at pertaining to social media. I met a guy by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk back in 2011. Gary became an incredible...
Who's that guy, right?
Yeah, right. I'm sure nobody's heard of him.
Yeah.
But this was before this was the Gary V wine days back in the day.
Wow.
And, he was another very, very impactful human being that helped me wake up to what was next and what was possible as I set out on this venture to create a brand, something that was more sustainable. But at the same time, as something Gary taught me early on, was that you need to build your personal brand in addition to your business brand. You see, your personal brand in perpetuity is your reputation. And that shook me to my core. And I thought, wow, holy cow, he's right. Because now we're living in an age where if you don't have a personal brand, you don't get the gig, you don't get the client, you don't get the job, whatever the case may be, because it's more of an edification process. And then 2016 rolled around and I just wasn't happy with the social media work. Now, 2011, I had started my podcast. It was called Social Buzz on Air. I used it to connect with people that I didn't know and I wanted to connect with, and then would later connect with at events that I would speak at, etc. And then I started it and stopped it a couple of times. So it wasn't consistent until 2016, where I went through a life-changing personal development course that absolutely changed the trajectory of my life forever. And I kept asking myself, am I the person that I need to be for the brand that I'm building? Because otherwise I'm just going to build the brand, I'm going to mess it up. So I need to get right with who I am as an individual and get anything unresolved tuned in, resolved, and worked through, so I can show up to the best of my ability as my highest self for the world. So I came out of that knowing that I no longer wanted to do a couple things. Number one, I had no interest in doing social media work any longer. I don't care about your Facebook page or your Twitter account. Hire somebody in-house to do it. Social should be done in-house, or hire an agency that really, really gets it. I've got to find my place in this world while still sustaining my personal brand as an author, speaker, coach, and person of authority within the digital space. So I had a friend challenge me to create a podcast solution that would help people start a podcast, because she had an internet radio show and I didn't even know what that was, and neither did she. And I said, it's not that difficult. You can start a podcast. She goes, I don't know how to do that, but you do. Why don't you create a solution that can help you do that? Wow. So the lights just immediately went off. I went back upstairs to my rented desk at this co-working space here in Miami, and I wrote at the top of the page, podcastlaunchlab.com. Turnkey podcast launch solution to take people from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less with their first 7 episodes. My ideal client is somebody just like me. It's an author, speaker, coach, person of authority, knows their natural next step is to start a podcast, just like their natural next step would be to write a book or start a speaking career or launch a YouTube channel. So it really all officially began again, if you will, with podcasting and launching the show in 2016. I rebranded the show again in 2018 for the third and final time to the Beyond the Story podcast. But I tell that story frequently and with a lot of candor, because there are no rules when it comes to podcasting. You can change things whenever you want as you create the rules. Now, it's not smart to be inconsistent, but we're talking over the course of a decade and change the name 3 times kind of makes sense. So In 2019, I went all in with podcasting as a business. So both a podcaster and a podcast business. And I really haven't looked back. So we service marketers and entrepreneurs through our 90-day launch program that takes them from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
I love the timeline view of the story, man. I really appreciate it. You know, it really makes you like it paints a picture of all the effort and everything that you've gone through, right? Mm-hmm. And before we started the show, you were talking, you know, we asked, oh, is that a real brick wall behind you? And you were like, oh, these are all the bricks that have been thrown at me throughout my career, right? And this story illustrates all those hardships that you've been through. So, man, congratulations on everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really, really do. And part of this entrepreneur journey is challenges and hurdles and headaches, and they're constant. And if you don't like that, just go get a job. That's Absolutely. The reality of being an entrepreneur. And I've been an entrepreneur since God spoke to Moses. My daughter was probably 3 years old. She's 20 now. So a long time in the making here. And then it was started off on the first half thinking I was going to be doing consulting and direct response marketing for realtors. Then the market crashes. And all of a sudden I think, I've got to build something more sustainable. I thank God every day for meeting Gary, because reading his first book, Crush It, the guy's, he's the real deal. And all of his predictions were accurate. Not every single one of them, but his track record of business is impeccable. And to know the human being that he actually is off camera and in person just solidifies that whole entire process. So big shout out to Gary.
Yeah, of course.
Wait, I do have a question that arises from that story.
Before the question, there's some elements in here that as you were explaining it, it's like it relates so much. I appreciate the fact that you're highlighting the time. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people get into this world of entrepreneurship and they think it's a very immediate thing, right? It's like, tomorrow I'm going to make millions, right? And tomorrow I'm going to have all these followers, and tomorrow, and it takes a lot of work. It takes consistency. And that's one of the things that we've learned throughout the life. I mean, not even close to what you've been in this entire universe, but we've done it like full in about 6 years now. Sure. And with the show, almost year and a half now, but it's like it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of systems, a lot of frameworks, right? And people, if they don't accept that, it's going to be really challenging for them to do it. But the cool thing is like there's a solution for those people that don't want to tackle this, and that's totally okay, right? I love the fact that you pivoted. I love the fact that you adapted. I love the fact that you evolve in your show to talk to maybe the right client, the right partners, find the right stories. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people think that we need to be like just encapsulated in that one thing that we decide, and we cannot move from that. So the fact that you show that, it's incredible too. So I just want to highlight those points that kind of resonated with me, because we have to look to the future, and those are things that we need to be okay with as we evolve. So
it's a clear representation of the entrepreneurial journey, and I absolutely love it.
Well, there's no fluff with it. It's just, this is the reality of it. And I don't think that entrepreneurs really take into consideration what's involved both mentally for mental health and also just sustainability. 10 years, it takes, I firmly believe it takes 10 years to build a brand, because when you look at all the variables that are involved with doing it, it's not just making a business profitable, it's the lives that you're impacting and who you're becoming. Jim Rohn once said, become a millionaire not because of the money, but because of the person you become while becoming a millionaire. And I never forgot that, because it has, I talk to successful people all the time that got more money than they'll ever be able to spend. And it just simply isn't about the money. It is about the journey and those that you're impacting along the way and who you're becoming part of that process.
That is so true. Like, to be able to achieve those things, you need to literally change and evolve as a human and develop and grow. And I mean, we notice it. We've said it many times. If we look 3 years back, right, and we talk to the Luis and Luis from 3 years back, we wouldn't probably even recognize each other, right? It's like, wow.
Thank God, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank God.
For once, you did not have a beard. So yeah, that
for
would
once. It's like, who's this guy? Sebastian, honestly, I have a question that I'm gonna ask you, but I'm gonna leave that one for part 2, just so we can get into the podcast sucks, right? If you don't have one, because I love that. You mentioned that, obviously you have a lot of knowledge in direct response marketing, about marketing elements, which is absolutely great. But I'm curious, right? Why people need podcasts right now? Why businesses needs the podcast, right? Why do you come up with that podcast talk if you don't have one?
Well, I just feel that when you know more than the average person about a specific topic, it is your responsibility and duty to help make sure everyone can learn and understand what it is. If someone is not a fit for our podcast agency, that doesn't mean they can't read my book and start a podcast. That doesn't mean they can't go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/podcast launch lab, and be able to consume an entire library of content out there. Why does a brand need a podcast, or why should brands start a podcast in 2021? I look at it this way. If I called you 25 years ago and I offered you a Tuesday spot on a local FM radio station, you wouldn't think about it. You wouldn't sleep on it. You wouldn't talk about it. You'd say yes, and you would figure it out on the way down as you were capitalizing on the opportunity. Why? I mean, FM radio. If we look at where we're at now, there's never been, number one, never been a more exciting time to be alive. Number two, never been an easier time to start a business. And number three, there's never been an easier time to become a media company as a brand. So starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast, being able to connect and build new relationships through interviews and through content that you're creating, and then that content going out into the world, resonating with someone, and then finding their way back to you to initiate a relationship or do business with you, I think is just incredible. Things have never been like this before with direct response or content. Or, I mean, I've been beating this drum for 10 years that, people of influence that are creating content and building a following online will be leveraged and used by brands as an actual business. So a personal brand being monetized has never been easier. I don't know that that's the way it used to be before digital and social came on the scene. You had endorsements and you had big brands, and that was really it. There was no in between on being able to leverage your personal brand or your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently I was listening to a podcast called My First Million, really good podcast. And they were talking about PMCs, personal media companies, right? And they were talking about how these personal media companies are literally going to overtake the mainstream media, because so many personalities are going, and people you see it in the stats, right? The decrease of viewership in regular media, and how people are turning more into these personal brands that you're talking about, right? And now these personal brands have real effect in the market. You see it when they speak about something, they share some information, they move literally markets, right? I mean, Elon Musk with, you can go crypto, all that stuff. We love to the moon, right? We love YouTubers. We think it's amazing to see how they deal with things and how they move the markets when they speak about their opinions about certain things. And it's a great opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for businesses, because it has never been easier to put your message out there into the world, right? I mean, we have the accessibility, all the tools right here, just like we're doing it right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, I look at it this way. I mean, look what happened last night. A YouTube influencer fought one of the greatest boxers of all time.
Yes.
Because of a couple of things. Okay. Definitely not the world boxing title. Okay.
Yep.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. For brand endorsement, brand awareness, brand recognition, pay-per-view sales, ticket sales in person.
Yeah.
And then not to mention what it did for their individual
interest of people that were not familiar with the sport, that are tuning in and paying a huge amount of money to watch a fight, like us, for example. I've never seen a full boxing match. I'm like, I'm there. I want to see what happens, right?
Sure.
And they're turning audiences. Incredible. Yeah, that on its own is incredible case study. By the way, were you at the fight?
No, I didn't go. Listen, when I buy tickets to shit like that, the guy gets knocked out in the first round. Okay, so I'm better off just buying the pay-per-view and watching that happen, or waking up at 3 a.m. and opening up Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say you didn't go to the event live for the sake of everybody else, so everybody else could enjoy the 8 rounds, right?
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Unless I'm ringside, I mean, a little bit of a diva when it comes to boxing or fights. I don't want to watch it on a big screen. I could do that at a bar.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Sebastian, I know that we're coming down, and we're gonna have to definitely do part 2 of this, or
absolutely,
hang out in the group for sure. but I want to ask you maybe two quick questions before we let you go. So number one is, what is a quick action point that somebody that's starting that media company that they have to start, right, for their own brand? This is not a if I start one, is like I need to start putting my message out there and publishing. What is something that they can do today to get that momentum going?
I think you need to quickly realize that by you not taking action and actually making the jump to create the content, to launch the platform and doing it, just like my original story, you're being grossly negligent to the people that want to consume that content, that have an interest in it, that don't know what you don't know, that don't know what they don't know that they don't know. And you have the unique ability and gift. We're all given these God-given gifts to be able to bring to the world on here. And by you not taking action, you're being a taker. And I don't think anybody wants to be called a taker or be considered a taker. They want to be called considered what? A giver, somebody who contributes to the world and leaves people different. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast and you've had an interest or even that nudge, I always say that nudge, that gut feeling is God whispering to you what your next move is. So being able to recognize that, I think, is the first step in realizing. And if you've had the intuition, the nudge, whatever you want to call it, to start a podcast, that, my friend, is everything that you need in order to know that you should be starting a podcast. That's the sign that you've been looking for. So
I love it.
First things first, come up with a name. What am I going to call the show? Who am I going to serve? And what are we going to talk about? Once you figure those three things out, anything's possible, because you can graphic designers are a dime a dozen. We got canva.com to create your podcast artwork, your intro, your outro, your podcast artwork, your intro, your outro, your teaser. All that stuff can be knocked out with freelancers for next to nothing. Or you decide, you know what, I want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing and it's going to hold my hand through the process, that's got a reputation. And then you schedule a call with myself or somebody on my team, and we talk about our options here at the Podcast Launch Lab.
Absolutely. We're going to leave all the links right below. So if you're interested, go get in contact with them. Last question, favorite question of the show. Where will you be if you do not publish?
If I didn't publish a podcast, I'd be managing Facebook pages. I'd be a social media manager. Nothing wrong with that. That's just not my gift. So, and by the way, my book dropped in December, my second book, Podcasts Suck. If you don't have one, the title of this episode on here, all you do, the links will be available from the guys here, but podcastsuck.com will bring you right to Amazon. And I say, don't just read the book. If you do what it says, you'll have everything you need in order to start a podcast. I put my blood, sweat, tears, heart, and soul into this book because it's my responsibility to help you better understand what you don't know that you don't know about the world of podcasting and what's possible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people connect with you besides, obviously getting the book?
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Podcast Launch Guy, and I spend a majority of my time on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is lit, as my friend would say.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely need to hang out more on the LinkedIn space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for those that are multi-purposing content, putting stuff out there, we highly recommend LinkedIn. We grew our LinkedIn account by 800% this past year, which sounds insane. Is because we were not active there, and it just continues to grow organically every single time, and the connections that we're making in there are incredible. So thank you for bringing that out.
It's a non-stop networking event. That's the thing about it.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But it's 80% about your engagement and you're connecting with new people and engaging on other people's content, and 20% about your own content.
Absolutely.
So, and it's not there for you to find a job or for recruiters to go harass people who want to find jobs. It is a true social media platform where people are there to network, build relationships, and get stuff done.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. We really appreciate it.
Any last words you want to share before we head out?
Yeah, just remember, it takes longer than you think, and podcasts suck if you don't have one.
That is right.
I love it. With that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and follow the show and on Facebook and Instagram at BIZBROS Co.
That is right. And if today's episode helped you move one step closer to your goal, please don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Bye, guys.